One of those names that we've been talking about for a very long time here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel is now a Nittany Lion. I'm Thomas Raincar, Ryan Snyder here with me on another committed video series. We're talking about the latest Penn State football player to join the class of 2026. That'll be the bulk of the video. There's also some other things going on, obviously, so we have to talk about those here in a little bit. But as always, these are an encapsulation of the recruiting story to this point for the individual player, and that is the primary focus of this particular video. So, Ryan, thank you for your time today. Very busy time of season with all these decisions coming out. So what do we got going on today?
Yeah, Jackson Ford finally committed. Not finally committed, right? I mean, he did it the right way, took his time, took all his visits. But, of course, the Malvern Prep defensive end, about just under 6'4", 240, has long been considered a guy that Penn State should be able to land. It wasn't easy compared to, some in-state guys, right? They get them early. Yeah. But of course, he had a Michigan and Ohio State and Wisconsin. Those ended up being the primary competitors there. Kentucky and Stanford were two other official visits that he took as well. So, but this is a player who Penn State has long been, I always thought they're going to be top two, right? Who's going to be the competitor? Who's going to be the one that pushes Penn State? Originally, I thought it was Michigan, and he admitted that it was Michigan for some time. Ohio State then offers a little bit later, and obviously the Buckeyes are, one of the top programs in all of college football, so they were right there. Yeah. I thought it was Ohio State and Penn State down the stretch. I was wrong. It was Wisconsin, which was interesting to me. Basically from our discussions, Wisconsin and Penn State were just the most consistent, which makes sense at times. I understand why. He's an in-state player. Penn State has to be on him really hard. And for a school like Wisconsin, he is probably their number one kind of top guy, where obviously with Ohio State, we know they went after Luke Wayfield just like Penn State did. Carter Meadows, too, is another freak of an athlete. But I don't want to talk about those guys and not talk about Jackson Ford as if he's not awesome, because he is a heck of a player. Yeah. He came to Whiteout camp last year, was absolutely excellent. I believe we've discussed it already publicly, but to run a 4.6 or so 40 at 240 pounds, just under 6'4", that's really good for a player who, one, still has another year of high school to go, and two, a lot of development still to happen. So he's not Abdul Carter running 4.4s and things like that, but there's a lot to like here as far as his mold and his build and where you can take him from there. So good broad jump numbers. What's his reach, Chief Frank? Like 32 and third or something like that.
A little over 32. Bad. It's right in that zone where you would say it's not perfect, but it's also playable for sure. So in terms of it being a strength or he's right in that average zone of where you want to be for an edge rusher. And I think that's, to me, that's critically important when you've got James Franklin always says, like, each of your skills is a weapon, and so you want to have as many weapons as possible when you're going into a situation, and he absolutely has enough from that length side to complement his speed and athleticism.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So, it really kind of started last year at the Whiteout camp. Like I said, that's where he got offered, and visited twice this past season, was at the Whiteout game, and I believe UCLA, I want to say, was the other one. From a while there, then he started picking up quite a few other offers. I don't think he came back to Penn State until April. Took a few visits. I know Alabama, Miami. I think he went to Tennessee early on. I know Alabama and Miami, I think, were either late in the fall, early in the maybe January, junior day kind of season. So, he did look around at some schools outside the region. But I think at the end of the day, one, academics are very important to his family. So Big Ten schools kind of fit that a little bit better. And I don't think it's a surprise then. That Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, they were all, the top schools in the end. Yeah. So he's technically the first defensive end in this class. Obviously, he wasn't quite the first. Daniel Jennings committed quite some time ago and has since reclassified and will roll at Penn State, here this summer. So right now he's the one defensive end in this class. That's going to change at some point, whether it's Carter Meadows or Tyson Harley or whomever it may be. Time will tell, but this was an important first step for Penn State to get Ford on board, because at the end of the day, he is an in-state prospect, and he's been a very important target for Deion Barnes for basically a year now.
Yeah, and I just want to put this back up here on the screen for Penn State fans to see. He is by the two major recruiting services, On3 and 247, ranked in the top at least 250 thereabouts. On3, he's 253. 247, he's 202. That pushes his industry ranking up to 217. edge rusher. He's almost a top 25 player in both areas. And then in Pennsylvania, a top 7 player. So this is a guy who's a very quality prospect. And I think the nature of that is really interesting of what kind of prospect he is, because we've talked a lot about these defensive ends in this particular recruiting cycle that are regional players that Penn State's been interested in. He's the one guy I feel like we don't really have a player profile for. Like, we knew what the strengths for Carter Meadows were in terms of upside and length. We know about Luke Wafel's power and his size. And I would say even Tyson Harley is a great pass rusher, what we know about those players. Jackson Ford, in a certain way, has been a little bit under the radar. And I want to explain why in just one second. But first, a word from our sponsor. In football and in finance, having a strong game plan makes all the difference. AJ Freedom Financial helps individuals build personalized financial strategies that align with their goals, timelines, and risk tolerance. From investment guidance and retirement planning to 401k rollovers, HSA assistance, and legacy and wealth strategies, AJ Freedom Financial offers thoughtful, one-on-one support backed by industry experience and a commitment to transparency. Whether you're starting to invest, planning for retirement, or you simply want a second look at your financial approach, AJ Freedom Financial is here to help you make informed, confident decisions. Schedule a no-obligation consultation today at www.ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. Again, that's ajffi.com. Call 866-383-6899 or email info@ajffi.com. AJ Freedom Financial, helping Nittany Lions fans plan for what's next. Securities and investment advisory services offered through Gradient Securities, LLC. Arden Hills, Minnesota, 866-991-1539. Member FINRA, SIPC. Gradient Securities, LLC, and SEC registered investment advisor, offers investment advisory services under the DBA of Gradient Wealth Management. Gradient Securities, LLC, and its advisors do not render tax, legal, or accounting services. Insurance products and services offered through AJ Freedom Financial. AJ Freedom Financial and Freedom Financial Insurance, LLC, are not affiliated with Gradient Securities, LLC. So I want to get into Jackson Ford as a football player, because I think we mentioned his athleticism and his measurables and some of the testing numbers. On the football field, I find him very interesting. There's some things about his game that you see that you're not going to see here on the highlights, where the highlights are, kind of in that range of, this is a top 200 player, this is a top 250 player. His ability to bend the edge and get to the quarterback, I think, is as good as you've seen from other Penn State prospects that have gotten commitments from Penn State and gone on to be good players. When he's able to do that, as you can see here, devastating pass rush with good lengths, athleticism to the edge. To me, he's a very raw prospect. Some of the things that he doesn't necessarily do exceptionally well, understanding pass rushing moves, how to set things up, how to rush with good angles. So these are more technical things than physical ability, or honestly, I think mental acuity. Like, he is an aware football player that makes plays in the moment, but doesn't have the techniques mastered to be a highly effective player on tape. So you do watch it and go, okay, obviously I see the athleticism, obviously, but that feels like there's another gear he can get to. And his senior year, I think that you mentioned Abdul Carter. Abdul Carter to me was in a similar way of, he's obviously athletic, but there's things holding him back from really flashing regularly. And it's just knowing what he's doing. And I think Jackson Ford is kind of young to football. That's I think, hiding some of his potential in this conversation with those other players that we're talking about. Offensively, I think it's even more acute. You watch him on the offensive side of the ball. He played tight end last year and just was uncomfortable, didn't really know what to do. You see him thinking a lot on film. So when he's not thinking, all that athleticism shows up. This year, I'm interested to see. I know he's been working with a 7-on-7 team this spring. I think there's more skill position talent to develop for Malvern Prep on that side of the ball. So I think that you'll see more of that his senior season. But from that perspective with Jackson Ford, I just see like it's purely upside, which is funny to say for a guy that's a 4-star top 200 player. And it's about upside for me with Jackson Ford. It's just an interesting recruiting profile. Normally guys that have upside and maybe not as much production, they're closer to that 3-star range, but as a 90 overall, I think that that's a high floor with a lot of room to grow, literally and figuratively, for Jackson Ford. As you mentioned, 240 coming into his senior season. I guess, what do you project for him going forward in terms of maybe upward momentum. It doesn't necessarily matter. The player is committed to Penn State. He's going to Penn State, but fans love, getting a win and seeing a guy go up the recruiting ladder. Is that something that you think is possible for him, or is he kind of slotted where he is?
Yeah, certainly technical. That's where he has to grow, and so many of these guys do, man. I mean, there's only a handful of guys out there who are already, well sound with their hands and their ability to use leverage and things like that. To me, Jackson Ford is one high character kid, great academically, cares about the right things. Like that's a massive check mark for Penn State. Two, effort kid, works his tail off. Always see him getting after it. Like, I mean, there's been a lot of defensive ends over the years that we watch take off plays constantly. That's not something you have here. And then three, you have those verified measurables athletically of like, okay, here's your solid base. Now let's put this all together of a guy who cares about the right things, who's going to work his butt off. And oh, by the way, he's a great athlete. And that's what Deion Barnes is paid to do, to take that mold and to make him into, the next, I'm not going to say NFL. I mean, who knows what it'll be. But my point is there's no reason why he can't be a solid multi-year contributor and somebody who, has a lot of success at Penn State in years to come.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was to what you just kind of stumbled with there. I don't have a great comp like on the roster or recent for Jackson Ford because I think he's bigger than you think. As you mentioned, nearly 6'4". Maybe he doesn't have the Max Granville elite twitch off of the edge, but he's absolutely fast.
It's above average. Yeah, it's still above average, no doubt. Yeah.
All of these things that he has are all like really good, and I think there are these recruits that maybe they don't have one defining trait, right? That allows you to have a characteristic, a narrative, a storyline in this process, and that doesn't. It just, to me, it kind of obscures what this is a good football player is really where I'm getting to. And with a lot of diverse, well-rounded traits that we could see grow into a number of different ways. And so there's a lot of unknown, despite the fact that he's a well-known player within the Penn State recruiting community of people that follow along. By the way, if you're watching this and you do follow along or you're new, please like this video, subscribe here to the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel as we go through the hot end of the 2026 recruiting cycle here for the bulk of these commitments going to be coming, a lot of them over the next couple of days. And of course, if you want to go to bluewhiteillustrated.com, subscribe there for $1 to try us out for a week. That's also something where you're going to get a lot of information, including film evaluations, the recruiting story, the recaps, the breakdowns, all of that, how he affects the class, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But Ryan, we do have to talk about the class here. So normally when we end these videos, we do a brief look forward of what's next for Penn State football recruiting or what's next for the situation. We do have to recap what happened yesterday, if you're watching this on Friday, where 4-star quarterback Peyton Falzone decommitted from Penn State and committed to Auburn. We haven't been live to talk about it. So what was your initial reaction to the situation, and what's kind of the lay of the land as you've learned it so far?
Yeah, certainly a loss for Penn State. He's an excellent athlete and progressing as a passer and all those things. I think, just the initial feedback is just that Auburn really sold him on like, you are 100% a quarterback. And I don't know, while Penn State has made that clear as well, when you start off recruiting him as a tight end, there's always that in the back of your mind. Now, that's the initial feedback. I don't know. I would also guess that Auburn can be more aggressive financially in some ways, especially for a quarterback. And, is Penn State willing to double down, triple down if they have to get in that situation? I don't know. And I don't want to speak too much on that because no one's really talked to me about that, but I just know the lay of the land strong enough. And look, Auburn's struggling right now. Auburn's down. I think, man, I'm trying to find it here. I thought they were, where are they at? 59th right now. They only have 7 commits, so they need some buzz. They have some money to play with. Like, that just makes me think that like there's a potential there that they could be a little more aggressive in some ways, and maybe Penn State doesn't want to match or whatever it may be. But again, at the end of the day, from talking to actual sources and whatnot, it was the discussion is more so that they just really 100% sold them on, you are 100% a running back. There's no chance we try you in any other position. Yeah. That's the feedback. So I mean, Auburn only offered 3 weeks ago, basically, a little over 3 weeks ago, which is interesting to me. I'm not even sure if he visited. I texted everybody I knew last night to try and get some more feedback on, like, did he go to Auburn for an OV? Like, what's going on? And it was pretty silent on that end. And then, against, just from sources and Penn State's perspective, it was more so like, no, they just they just think that from a quarterback perspective, it's a better fit. So interesting. Now, obviously,
I would
who's
say
the
that
all? Go ahead.
just jump in here. If there's one thing I've learned watching Peyton Falzone interact and carry himself through this process, he 100% believes that he's a quarterback. I know that there's this conversation about him being an athlete in the future and all those things, and those people could be absolutely right. Peyton Falzone does not agree with you, and he thinks he's a quarterback. His family thinks he's a quarterback. So, in these conversations, if you find somebody who has that same level of belief, like I imagine, as you mentioned, the playing of the position, that tracks with how he's conducted himself throughout this entire recruiting process. When you talk to him, he's adamant about those things. So I just wanted to chime in, kind of endorse that idea of the bag, the money, all those things. Maybe that's part of it, but also like it is very much about him wanting to play quarterback.
And yeah, and I should stress that. I just know, like, when I look at what Auburn's doing, and I know how aggressive Auburn can be
Right.
from different things, like
They've done that
would
in the
make
past.
sense, and it's not something that everybody talks about. But again, I do want to stress that that's just me riffing more than true info. And if it's completely false, then I would apologize to the Falzone family. But the one thing I would mention is that, like, Deuce Knight did just go there last year with a 5-star quarterback. So, like, it'll be very interesting to me. There's no doubt that Deuce Knight is the one that Auburn fans have circled.
Does that make it a worse? Is that make it a long-term worse spot than Penn State, where obviously Drew Aller's
to some degree? I think
year?
so. That's what's interesting to me, because obviously Drew will be out, and then you're going to have a quarterback competition. You're going to have Gronk or Smolik likely emerge. You don't know what Beckham Kritza is yet. You won't really know until this fall. So my point with all that is like, I did a takeaway yesterday, and I originally wrote in that takeaway, I don't think that Penn State has to get another quarterback. Like, they liked Falzone because he's a great athlete, and don't want to miss on in-state talent. And the more I'll give Fitz credit, like the more he kind of talked to me about it, and we looked into it a little more. Like, I think they do need to get a second quarterback, because look, the reality is, if Smolik wins, Gronk's going to have a lot of people interested in him for that quarterback battle next year, and the same vice versa. If Gronk wins, Smolik will too. And then you don't know what you have in Kritza, and then boom, all of a sudden you're talking about Kuhn and whoever maybe a second quarterback could be. So you're running the risk there of one of your top 2 guys they're transferring out, and then maybe Kritza emerges, maybe he doesn't. We don't know that yet, but you're running. It's scary there when you look at the depth. We've seen all that with Penn State back in the day. Obviously after Sean Clifford and Taquan Roberson and things like that, like there was a gap there, and they haven't had that issue now for a couple of years, and they don't ever want that issue to happen again. They also don't really want to be spending stupid money on quarterbacks in the transfer portal, because at the end of the day, even if you're trying to bring someone in quarterback wise in the portal, you're going to pay stupid money for a backup. Like that's it. It doesn't matter. It's just, that's how the position works. And none of these quarterbacks want to be backups anyway, but like, either way, you're overpaying no matter how it plays out. So that's not something they want to do.
Where are you overpaying in the timeline? What are you overpaying for? And I think that's interesting, given like there was no certainty that Peyton Falzone was going to be a quarterback at Penn State anyway. So a lot of these conversations are still happening either way for Penn State, but at least they had 2 players that were quarterbacks by name in the class of 2026. And now that is up in the air again, we'll see where all these things go. I do want to once again apologize to Jackson Ford. Didn't want to step on his moment here in his video about how he fits at Penn State, but of course that's just huge news. Like a player, quarterback coming off the board.
Plus, we're getting towards the end of the class. Like, there's only so much to discuss moving forward here too. I feel like we just did a whole hour-long show on it yesterday. As far as it's Tyson Harley next week, and obviously, was it Marlon Bright next week, Dorian Barney next week. I wouldn't be shocked if Carter Meadows starts making progress. Like we all know that those guys are going to start trickling next week. I will say, Jack Fuches, keep an eye on him, offensive tackle. I'd say out of Tennessee, he's really bounced around because his dad, Scott Fuches, was a former offensive line coach at Buffalo and Kansas with Coral Nicky. And then, of course, now he's an assistant with the Tennessee Titans. So I keep an eye on him. That he's the one that I think this weekend you have to have circled. Damari Simeon's been already, RPM to Ohio State. Sounds like he's going to be a Buckeye. So I think this will be the one commitment today, but Fuches is the one to circle. That's the one that you're going to be texting me about it either 9:30 a.m. tomorrow or some other random. Yeah, I don't know what's coming. Let me clarify. I don't even know if Penn State's made a decision on that yet and where he's at, but that's going to be the random one we have to
scramble.
If
the bat signal does go up, it would that is the
he'd be the
player
one
you
I have
should have in
circled.
mind. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Well, great reason to subscribe to Blue White Illustrated here on YouTube and enable notifications so that you get alerts when all that happens. If you're not totally plugged in over at bluewhiteillustrated.com, I would do that. And then you can just join in here in the conversation, on the YouTube channel. Make sure that you're in on both of those. But we do have to get going because there's a lot of other stuff to do. And that is what we got here for Jackson Ford, committed to the Penn State class of 2026 defensive end. And like we just said, make sure that you're around, you're near your phone or your computer because there's more stuff going on with Penn State football recruiting. So we'll be back next time player commits to the Nittany Lions.